Good morning, my name is Burton. You guys, some of you were here yesterday. We are day 2 of the 3rd Annual CDH Summit. We have a busy day today, lots of good presentations going on. So I'm just going to run down kind of our itinerary, and then I will turn it over to our first guest. So we are going to have a presentation about post-traumatic stress disorder. I think whether you've had a CDH survivor or an angel, this is something that many of us have in common. So that'll be a good presentation today. We have an adult CDH survivor with a child of her own here today that will be sharing her story with us as well. We will have a fetal and pediatric surgeon, the surgeon-in-chief from Children's Hospital Colorado, Dr. Cromwell-Home. And then we will have Dr. Jason Geen that you guys met yesterday. He will be here as well discussing long-term care of CDH children, the long-term effects these children have, and how to care for them long-term. And then we will kind of wrap it up. We will do lunch today after all of those are done. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Elizabeth, and she's going to start us on our post-traumatic stress disorder, and then we will go from there. And thank you for you guys that are joining us on the live feed. If you guys have any questions throughout this, you can go ahead and type them in your box there, submit them, and then we will get those answered as well. If you guys have questions, we can kind of wait till the end, jot them down, and we will do the same format as yesterday and get them answered. So I'll turn it over to Elizabeth now.
Good morning. Many of us, after we have heard the diagnosis, we have had a CDH baby, whether they come home from the hospital or we have to go through the traumatic process of grieving for them. We experience post-traumatic stress disorder. They're starting to recognize this. There are a lot of articles up on the internet now about PTSD, and it's not just from soldiers in the war. You can have PTSD from any traumatic situation you go through. It's the way our brains somehow cope with a traumatic situation. If you're diagnosed prior to birth, you feel you are prepared. So most of us think, oh, this is simple. We just have surgery, baby's going to be fine, baby will come home, that's it. Sometimes we don't hear all the other things that can happen with CDH, or we may be in denial. Just hearing that your child has this life-threatening illness is a traumatic experience. Individuals have read stories of others that have really good outcomes, and they say, well, my child could have a good outcome too. The reality, once these children are born, everybody experiences something different. We sometimes have the babies that are in and out of the NICU in 2 to 3 weeks. Sometimes we have the babies that are in the NICU for 9 months or longer. Every child is different, and each experience is different. We don't know what is going to happen. Every time we turn around, there might be something new. This can be traumatic. Not knowing what will happen next is probably the worst thing. And being told that your unborn child has a 50% chance is pretty mind-blowing. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. Everybody else has normal, healthy babies. Healthy babies are born every day. Why did this happen to us? If you're diagnosed after birth, that's a shock. You're expecting a healthy baby. You had no idea. There's no preparation. All that information gets thrown to you at one time. You miss things. You aren't as prepared. It doesn't have time to slowly sink in before you're being inundated with papers to sign for surgeries, papers for ECMO, papers for choosing whether your child has tubes in his neck or not. Parents must suddenly learn about CDH. They learn of their child's care, the hospital policies. You're thrown into a whole new world. A NICU is not like any other experience you will ever have in your life. You see other children too. I think the scariest thing I saw were these premature babies. Really shocked me at how tiny they actually were. You see pictures, and It's not the same as when you see a real premature baby, because they are absolutely, you look at them and you could hold them in your hand at times, and that was shocking for me. And I'm sure they looked over at a baby on ECMO and thought that was totally shocking. Your emotions are raw and new, they're overwhelming. And it wasn't supposed to happen this way. You were supposed to have a healthy baby. You were supposed to, you had no idea anything about CDH. The only people we have that have known about CDH before they had a baby were those that were in nursing or had been exposed to some sort of neonatal education before. Even those who experienced PTSD at war, they could not predict the incidents they see. When you're in the NICU, you see life and death. They will suddenly tell you, get out of the NICU, there's a family we have to be with, and you know a baby is crashing. Or and all those experiences, you walk into a NICU, if you go with us for our tour, you might experience that. I know that there's certain smells that get to me. Somebody here told me yesterday about the smell of a baby in their home. And I didn't think about it, and now I know that smell. There's a smell to it. Hospitals also, many people complain, I don't like the smell of the hospital. And there are people that have not gone through what we have, but they will refuse to go to the hospital because of their experience. A NICU is similar to a war zone. You have life and death everywhere. Re-experiencing traumatic events, parents go home, and whether they have a child that survives or does not survive, they may smell something, hear something, a date comes up that reminds them of something, they will have flashbacks, or they'll feel like the event is happening again, even though it's not. They have nightmares, usually it's reoccurring nightmares. They have feelings that are so intense they don't know how to deal with them. And they're reminded of the trauma. Intense physical reactions. Sometimes you literally, I know grieving parents, our arms literally ache because we can't hold our child. There have been studies out there where they have taken grieving parents, and I think if they took NICU parents too, they would find this too. Our immunity levels drop after these experiences. So we're more susceptible to disease or to illness at that period of time, which means that we should be taking care of ourselves. And, you know, it can be physical. Many mental disorders, they're saying there are some physical reactions to. Nausea, pounding heart, rapid breathing, muscle tension, sweating, for no, just over an experience. Sometimes you avoid going to the hospital. You avoid places, thoughts, or feelings. There are some parents that have actually blocked out the experiences they had. And it's a way to take care of. It's denial, but it's also a way to take care of their own needs. Many times they have a loss of interest in activities, and they just go through the motions. They're either taking care of their child, or they're going through grief, and they're going to work, they're taking care of their other kids, but they're not enjoying life. They're just in this limbo. They feel detached from others emotionally. I don't know how many CDH parents have said to me, other people just don't understand. They just don't know what it's like. They can't. There are bits and pieces of other things that people might be able to relate to, but CDH parents know exactly what other CDH parents have felt at times. It's not always similar, but it's somehow we can understand or empathize better than anybody else. There's also a sense of limited future. You know that this was life or death. You accept the fact that your life is not going to be forever. And sometimes you don't have great hope for the future because of all the trauma you've gone through, or just a little bit of trauma you've gone through. Many of the symptoms are anxiety and emotional. You have difficulty falling and staying asleep. I know I suffer from that. Still do sometimes. Irritability or outbursts of anger, especially to those close to you. Usually your parents or your spouse or even your other children. You have difficulty concentrating, especially early on. Hypervigilance, you're always on red alert. I did this for my oldest daughter. She couldn't move without me knowing where she was. I was scared to death of anything she did because, oh my God, she left the house, who's going to run into her? You know, if she's driving. All the scary thoughts would come, and I became what they call a white knuckle mom. I would stand there while she jumped. I'd be like, no, you can't do that. Feeling jumpy and uneasy, easily startled. These are some. We experience anger, irritability, guilt, shame because of our feelings and because of what we went through. We tend to say, well, what did we do to cause this? There's sometimes substance abuse. You feel mistrust. You don't trust other people. You feel betrayed, especially by your faith or your religion sometimes. There's hopelessness. Sometimes there's suicidal thoughts. I tell grieving parents that you might honestly feel suicidal. You won't take the initiative of doing it, but you will feel so much pain you will feel that suicide might be the answer. But you won't cross that line. You just feel like you would like it to happen, but you're not going to cross that line. Many parents feel really scared of those thoughts. They've never thought that before. They never were suicidal. Telling them that it's normal helps. You feel alienated, and then of course the physical pains. The risk factors for PTSD are the nature of the trauma, the events and the way it happens. There's nothing that I think health professionals can do that can cushion a blow, especially for CDH. You can't put pillows around it, I don't think. Previous traumatic experiences. I know I had one with a car accident, and I still don't remember the actual impact of the car. Family history of PTSD or depression. History of physical or sexual abuse. History of substance abuse. History of depression, anxiety, or other mental illnesses. And a high level of stress in everyday life. And lack of support over trauma. Lack of coping skills. And it says, how do you treat PTSD? It's not with a bunch of drugs. Although depression drugs can help, my route would be first to explore your thoughts and feelings. Work through the feelings of guilt, self-blame, mistrust, learn how to cope with either a counselor or a support group by just expressing the feelings that you're having can help. You can address the problems that you might have within relationships with PTSD. It's not something that's going to go away overnight. There's no easy pill for it. It's something that you have to work on. All parents of CDH children go through grief. Even the parents that have survivors, because they were supposed to have this healthy baby, we're supposed to come home, life was supposed to go on. We're not dismissing that parents who have children who choose wings don't experience divorce loss. We're just saying that parents of survivors also go through grief too. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Parents of survivors long for the normal, and normal is a relative term. We hate it at Breath of Hope. It's not a good word It's a 4-letter word. Besides, we don't like it. Unique is better. All parents struggle with their emotions. In general, we need to learn how to accept them, feel them, and learn from them. Other parents that are there on our listservs, out there on our pages and everything else that you can connect with, that probably have gone through the same thing or similar feelings as you have. Knowing others that have had the same feelings, sometimes it's like, wow, you felt that too? Or, it's normal for us to do that? I know some people hyperventilate before they go into hospitals. I have. We gain better understanding of ourselves and others. We also know our weaknesses, and just because it's a weakness doesn't mean you can't overcome it or you can't use your strengths to modify it. The healthy and strong individual is one who asks for help when he needs it, whether he's got an abscess in his knee or in his soul. We know who that is. Fear nothing. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions, concerns, anything that they want to address with Elizabeth or I? We can answer questions. Anything you guys would like to discuss?
I have a question. Just observing how close is a line are we walking with postpartum blues and PTSD? Very.
It's because the mom just gave birth, and usually postpartum depression starts 2 to 4 weeks after birth, and then you also have them going into NICU and all that trauma. So that, I think the women probably experience a lot more emotional than men do, because we do have those PTSD plus the postpartum, and still I don't think we're treating new mothers the way we should. I think that a lot of new mothers, they go a normal healthy pregnancy, they have a baby and the next day they take them out of the hospital. That's just not enough support in my view. And some families don't have the moms that will come and help, and the aunts that come and help. Many of them, the moms at home with the newborn. What do I do with this? So.
And I'll add to that as well. When you come home from the NICU with a survivor, you will often feel those same things. So you will have a baby that has special needs, and we have heard a lot. There's a lot of lack of support after you leave the NICU. There's not a lot of people that know how to take care of their child, so you will feel that isolated in the house. During RSV season, a lot of our kids don't go out, which means if there's nobody else that knows how to take care of them, you're in the house with them. There's not, locally, here in Colorado, we're trying to gather this support system, so you have somebody locally here that can say, hey, call me, I know how to work a feeding pump. Call me, I know how to work a suction machine. Call me, I'll come and help you. We're here physically, but that is something that we're starting here and locally. A lot of online support is there, and that's great because these are normal feelings. You're not the only ones feeling them, but it is the same as postpartum. It's probably longer down the road when you feel that isolation. You have this new baby that has a lot of different needs, and I think it needs to be talked about. So I'm glad that we did this. It needs to be opened up for moms and dads to talk about. I think men deal with this very differently than moms do, and it needs to be addressed. There needs to be a male support system as well for dads, and just know that it is normal for us. This is very, very normal feelings. This is very, very, very normal of the CDH journey, whether you've lost a child or you have a survivor, that they're all similar emotions that come with this. So I think they play hand in hand, postpartum and post-traumatic stress. The post-traumatic stress, I see several that start outside of the NICU once you've gone home and maybe return for an appointment, to pick up a prescription, to visit. Those are when those smells will trigger, those sounds. different things you hear and see in the NICU will come out once you've gone home and returned to the NICU. So as long as we are putting it out there, people are aware of it, it's okay to talk about it. It is our new normal. So if you guys, does anybody, Chris?
I'm going to ask, what's a good way to handle people who approach you as if, I get a lot of people who, they try to understand what we're going through, but yet they're somewhat dismissive and say, oh, don't worry, it'll be okay. And oh, he's so strong, just pray and everything will be fine. And it's
Yes.
like, that's a very simple approach. And sometimes I just want to turn around and say, really? Like, that's it? That's all I have to do? I mean, you know what I mean? And so, what's a good approach to take to people? Like this, I don't...
Personally, that was probably where us as a family felt isolated. A lot of people will not understand. We got a lot of the, I couldn't imagine. Well, we don't want you to imagine. You're the strongest person ever. I tell my moms now, you don't have to be strong every day, because in this journey, you're not going to be. With that, I would try to explain, have them see, I think, coming to our home, seeing oxygen, feeding pump, G-tubes, different medications, the vomiting, the side effects, the physical therapy. I think when somebody is actually in your home, in the NICU, that they understand. Some will never understand. We also had families that would come and see and thought that day that Abel bled out and we almost lost him was it, and then he was better and just, got better and went home, and we should be all back to normal life when he went home. However, it isn't. And so for them to see it firsthand, some of those people, I would suggest that maybe if they saw Adrian firsthand and saw what he goes through, and outside of pictures and traveling through the NICU and seeing what that environment is like. Some people, and I will be 100% honest, some people will never understand. They will tell you it's all going to be okay. Just pray. Yeah. Just pray and kind of go on. They will be very dismissive. Those are the people that don't want to know. They don't want to know surgery details. They don't want to know. Or else they would, or they would spend the time getting to know your struggles. I think so. A suggestion for that is explain as much as you can and then leave it be, would be my suggestion. Because if they want to know, they'll come to you. They'll ask you. My sister came to me at one point and said, okay, what buttons do I push on the feeding pump? How do I hang it? She wanted to be involved, how to work that. I think that's my suggestion. I don't know, Maggie might have some suggestions. She has Alicia at home.
Yeah, I would say, you kind of have to know your audience. Like, I remember our chiropractor who we love would always say every time I'd say, I just have a feeling everything's going to be okay. And in the long run, yes, things have worked out really well for us, but there was a lot of days of not okay. So I think you kind of have to know, like, is this a person that I'm going to be, spending a lot of time around, like, how much detail do I want to go into with them? Like, with him, I was just kind of like, okay, well, obviously he'll see, how things turn out, because I'm going to continue to see him. Right. And I would say, too, if you have access to, like, maybe different people's blogs and the people who really care and you want them to know what you're going through and stuff, like, you guys are writing a blog, but I think it's a good idea to be like, hey, maybe check out this person's blog for this time period and see what they've been through. Like, this is what life is at home. Because,
because
like,
Amber
your
posted
friends,
something and shared with them too, so they could...
That scared you?
Yeah, right. Scared my mom too, so thank you very much.
Like, you guys are, in the NICU experience now, but, like, for your friends and family that you really want them to know what it's going to be like when you come home, like, feel free to share our stuff,
Exactly. And I think I always say...
have a heads up, because it's shocking for them, like, like, oh, sure, they can, be down in Colorado Springs and say, oh, everything's going to be fine, and blah, 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 and you're going to come home, and life's going to be easy, and, like, life gets a lot harder when you go home, like, the NICU is kind of like, it's really stressful, and there's a lot of hard stuff that happens, but it's kind of a honeymoon period, because
I used to tell Maggie that all the time.
24-hour care. You go home, and you are the 24-hour care, and your friends and family might not understand how difficult that's going to be.
Another thing we tell families when they contact us, you will find that your friends will become strange, and some family will become strange, and some strangers will become closer than family.
It's already happening.
And it's really weird to see that fall apart and come together. I lost some friends I got angry at some family. I got over it. I don't know if they got over it, but they were civil to me. They're still civil to me. But the whole thing is, it also, it makes you realize what people are really all about, and who really is out there caring for you and your child, or really cares about what you're going through. And it doesn't dismiss those people that don't have time, or it's just, you realize who's superficial and who's not, who's deeper and who's not, who gets it and who doesn't.
I also think, like, you know, to help with that stress disorder is writing, it's coping, it's
blogging
your coping mechanism.
No, it does help.
Blogging your stories also helps.
And so if you tell somebody
Honesty
about
helps.
your blog, if they want to go deeper into your story, and you can say, hey, here's the blog, read it. You know, I think when you talk to somebody, you know, their time, you know, at times can be busy. So, you know, you can give them the high-level version of your story and say, hey, here's the details of it, because that's what we're experiencing. That's what we're explaining. So,
And I think honesty, I think in hindsight, looking back in the NICU, I try to focus on the positive. And I look back, I read my blog, I look back and I said, you know, I was protecting everybody from all the pain, suffering, the things that we went through, to say I focused on all the positives. So I explained to people in a blog entry, I sat down and explained to them that we weren't always strong. These are the struggles. And honesty. And so when I come and see you guys at the hospital, I think I remember telling Maggie, I'm like, enjoy your time in the NICU, and she looked at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, really, you think it's hard now? I'm being honest with you because nobody was honest with us to tell us when you leave, oh, that's when it gets hard. Or, you know, when you leave, I've heard from staff that when grieving parents leave, there is no support system. They go from all this NICU support, all the doctors, nurses, and then they go home without their baby, and they go home with no support. So that's when it tends to get difficult. Not taking anything away from the NICU is a very difficult experience, but being honest. So I tell my moms, you don't always have to be strong. It's okay. And being honest in the things that Abel vomited a lot. We were washing 15 loads of laundry a day. Just the different things, to be honest. We're human, we're people. These are the honest and true things that people go through at home with these survivors.
And going through with the non-survivors, we get a lot of that too. We don't know, we can't imagine what you're going through. No, we don't
Or
want
that you should get over it.
Yes, get over it was the best one after like 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks, we should just,
Or
Move
going
on.
home with your
Life
child, you should be
continues.
happy and
Yes.
everything is great because you went home, but they don't understand those day-to-day struggles. And I think you had a question.
I have a comment along the lines of how do we handle this situation as parents? As parents, we're advocates for our children, and we have to pick and choose our battles. And at this stage in the game, your energy levels are critical, not only to yourself and your well-being and being healthy for your child, but for your spouse, for your family, for your church. Just every day getting up and doing household chores. Because if you're not, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And the one that needs you the most, you'll become unavailable because you're sick with the flu, or you're just mentally drained and you're checked out. And those things happen. And it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to go get a massage. It's okay to cry.
it's okay to go to the bar if you're
Yeah.
not.
It's okay to go to the bar.
just not every night.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
tough. It's gonna be tough, and the work does begin overtime and everything.
And
I
with
also-
those people, you know, like she said, in that don't waste your energy on those people that will just never understand. And we encountered a few of those, like Maggie said, when we were pregnant, we had somebody that would continuously pray for us, which is amazing. We're very grateful. They would pray for that Abel would just be normal and healthy, and his diaphragm would be formed, and all of his intestines and organs would be down, and we would go home after 2 days. Unfortunately, we can see yes, miracles happen, but our idea of a miracle was if Abel survived. And so realistically, those people just didn't understand the birth defect. They didn't understand the medical concept of it. And so we went through that, and I think my mom told me, you can't waste your energy. Again, your audience, do they really want to know or don't they? If they want to know, give them the tools to explore that and learn about your child and learn about what's going on. And if not, it has to be, he's doing good today, it's a bad day, and kind of limit it. Don't waste your energy on people that aren't really there to support you and really there to help you through this.
And I think in some ways, sometimes we have to be the bigger people too and extend grace to those friends and family, because it's so hard, and you don't know, if I was on the outside looking into this situation and had never been through it before, I would not know how to help people, and a lot of people will offer help, and like for me, I'm either afraid to accept the help or just too proud to accept the help a lot of times, so if you really want the help and need the help, if someone offers it, just take it.
Or channel it.
Yeah, if
make a donation, bring me a dinner.
Meals or to clean your, if someone
vacuum
offers
my
to clean your
house,
take them.
Don't
ever refuse
Take my other children.
Well, and they don't know, so they say, let me know if I can help, which is a very broad statement, but if they're genuine about it and you say, I need help with these other 2 kids, or I need help doing my laundry, or I need you to pick up a prescription. If you give them a very simple instruction, they can follow through with that. This is so big and overwhelming that they don't know how to be helpful to you, but I think they do want to extend their offer. And so for us, it was the same thing. I am very prideful, and to accept help or to ask for help was a very difficult thing. You'll need it.
Well,
you definitely will.
If someone helped us, how can we repay that person?
Yeah, that was my thing. Give me something back, and I don't have anything.
And you kind of have to let go of that.
You have nothing to offer right now. You have nothing to repay right now.
There may be a time in the years to come that you can help that person, but most people aren't offering help and expecting something immediately or in return. And I think too, I have kind of experienced this in the last year, is a few of my really good friends kind of dropped off the face of the map, and I've tried to reconnect with them because they're people I really care about, and I know their hearts, and I know that they, love us and stuff. And the comment that I always get from them is like, we just kind of left you guys alone because we don't want to be in the way, which is what some people think is probably what you want or whatever. And I know these people, so I know it wasn't like this was too deep for me. I couldn't get involved or whatever. So sometimes you just have to extend grace to those people and just know that if there's someone that you really want to stay in touch with, you might have to make it happen.
And tell them,
We have something similar as grieving parents. They don't want to mention their children because they think it's going to make us sad.
And that's what I was going to ask. Maybe Tanya has some input on as far as that. People that say you should just get over it and things like that. Any advice that you have in dealing with that post-traumatic part, and things that can help, things that can be helpful. Support to you, because we're because our goal is to be able to offer help that's really going to help, and things that are really going to be helpful, words that are going to help. And so not to just focus on the post-traumatic of bringing a baby home from the NICU, but also ones that have lost their children as well. What was helpful, what was not helpful, what are some suggestions that you can give us as feedback?
Probably my biggest thing was when you go out in public and you have these people that you hang out with all the time, and you see them in public and they look at you funny, and you look at them and you ask them, what's different about me just because I didn't come home with my child? And then you have those ones. I guess my biggest thing was when somebody asked me how I was doing, I sugarcoat it, but then you have those ones that really want to know how you were doing, and they sit next to you and, no, don't sugarcoat it. Tell me, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And those are the ones that are your true friends. And those, you can sit there and you can cry on their shoulder, you can cry in their arms, and they help you through it. Then there's those ones that they're your friends to your face, but not to your.
So how did you handle that with the simplicity of the same?
I kind of turned myself into a little hermit for a long time. It's been 5 years since I lost my daughter, and I became a hermit. I get people calling me.
I'd be glad to pull with it.
So like reflecting back on that, do you think that was like the right thing to do? Like to
In the beginning, yes. Because I think it's helped me become who I am now.
Yeah.
And where I'm at now. A lot of people have asked me because my oldest son was 2.5 at the time. They've asked me, how do you have your oldest deal with it? Because even to this day, he was 2.5, but even to this day, he's like, Mom, I miss my sister. I want my sister back. And he'll tell me, Mom, you're gonna have another baby. I'm like, honey, there ain't gonna be no more babies.
And is that something that just helped you talking, like really, and I think I hear it too, and you can probably chime in on this, that talk about, say Nadia, we want to see pictures of you, we want to know that she was here. Do you agree that we don't just, how are you, and pretend that it didn't ever happen?
Definitely.
To be supportive in the future.
I think what really helped me was people that would remember.
When they would say my daughter's name, it brightens my face and it just makes my day even so much better. But when they just simply say, how are you? Does your son think about it? Say her name. Don't, her name's not to be ashamed of. Say her name. And so that's where I've gotten.
Well, it's also things like, there were a few people that would send me cards on her birthday or Angel Day. And those things, just remembering her, or just knowing that others out there were thinking of me when I was going through those days. And another thing is birthdays. When you experience the first birthday, it's going to be kind of, it's nice, it's really an accomplishment, but then you also can go back and think about everything that happened before they became one, and it can also take you back to their birth, and that can put you back into PTSD. But yeah, remembering them, acknowledging that they existed. Sometimes, especially in families, there are some family members who just simply ignore. We had a lot of that. We still are having some of that.
See, and I do a balloon release every year on her birthday, and we have notes attached. And so it's just a family thing. We go up to the cemetery. I make cupcakes. We do balloons. We don't have the ice cream because it's too hot. But we notes, and we've been able to get. So first year the balloons didn't go anywhere, but because it was so rainy and nasty. We went out in the field and grabbed all of them. But the second year, I live in northwest central Kansas. Okay, I'm thinking maybe Missouri. That's about as far as North now. I got one back from Philadelphia, and so just getting that one back was, it was amazing. Somebody took the time out of their schedule, a farmer, and says, hey, I found your balloon. It was great.
So to recognize those, I think is supportive. Just recognize birthdays, special days.
She mentioned Angel Day. That's a new term to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Angelversary, Angel Day, the day they decided to choose wings over food.
Do you have any other questions?
And that this is a family. This is an extended version of your family. And I think everybody here at any point would answer the phone for somebody that needed help.
Yeah.
Or had a question that didn't have a computer, didn't have Wi-Fi, or needed a hug that doesn't have a mom. I think that's important too.
And to say, and for in Colorado and knowing, to say I don't know what to say or I don't know what to do, but I can ask or I'll find resources, and that's to be supportive and to say, because in these situations people do not know what to say, or to say I just don't know what to say, but let me find out, or how can I help you, or being that honest again and saying I don't even know what's going on fully, but making yourself available, I think, helps and keeping it honest. So, and again, that offer is always here. Elizabeth's always here. I'm always here. Chris.
How do you do it when you have 3 children of your own to take care of? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. I think that's amazing.
I
was gonna say, I would feel awful to call you and say, hey, I really need your help because of this, and I know
why
you're dealing
I wouldn't have offered it.
You're dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with. You know what I mean?
However, we're at a different stage. My husband, and thank you to him, he's not the, I always say this, he's not the forefront. You don't always see his face at the hospital. You don't always see him, delivering meals, but he's the one that stays home with our kids so that I am available. So,
And my husband does the same thing.
yeah,
And
they
before-
allow us to be available.
And I have followed for 13 years families with survivors. So, and I love reading about your girls' eating difficulties and all the other issues that you all have. And the reason why is because I know I would have gone through that. Had she survived, I know she would have gone
It's
through that.
probably a healing thing.
It's healing, not only that, but to see the kid that had 10% chance and was doing things that my daughter did, survive. I would rather more than do that.
And I think
Then,
for us in a
yeah.
selfish way, and I probably haven't told all of you guys this, but for me, it's healing. So
It's
in a
healing.
You're
in
so
a very
selfish.
sick, odd way, in a very sick, odd way for me to return slowly to the NICU was very healing. I sat in the NICU when baby Patrick went on ECMO. I met Maggie while Alicia was on ECMO, and I wasn't prepared to see her, so I waited in the hallway. And a year later, I actually was able to walk in and see baby Patrick on ECMO. It's a very healing thing. So in a selfish way, it was very healing for me to help
I
you
think
guys.
after like these journeys, it changes you. Like you're just a new person, right? I mean, like would everyone agree with that? Like you're just a new person from when you started to after you're done in the NICU. And so, like when you give back, like I was telling her, I'm not really like a open kind of person usually, but I was doing a lemonade stand last Sunday, and I was like talking about CDH, and it made me feel good. And so I think that's where like Amber's coming from. It's like, yes, we experienced that. Yes, we had a baby that survived, but we want to give back because it feels good. It feels good to us.
And we know we're actually helping you because
Yeah,
we've
and we
been
know
there,
what
so we know the
what you
things
guys
that we're
went through,
doing.
And like, if we can give you guys an extra meal, if we can
Hold your baby
watch
when
your
you're not
baby
there,
for 2 hours,
that
you
is
can
something
watch
that my
your
mom
baby.
did for us. I know you guys work, and he's there all day. So for me to say, I'll go hold him on my days that I can come up there, I can make arrangements. The reason I do it is because I can. Abel is here and he's healthy enough to where I can leave him with my mom and I can go hold your baby, or she can volunteer and go hold your baby, because those things matter and they make you feel comfortable and a little bit more, it makes the journey a little bit easier. So those are the things that, why I help, because I know it's actually helping. I know it actually means something, and it's not mindless, not useful help. It is things
Or
that
it's
we,
distance. I emailed Amber when she was still expecting, and I said, how are you feeling? And give me the truth, and I know you're not sleeping.
she asked, are you sleeping? And I was like, should I say yes or should I? She already knew because she had gone through that.
Yeah.
So to be honest in saying that, how are you feeling? That, and I remember that email to this day because it was the day I think I was diagnosed, and she got right back with me and asked, are you sleeping? Because she knew in the back of her mind that she probably wasn't sleeping when she got diagnosed. And it's that understanding and knowing. And so that is,
It can be a simple phrase that, you're facing ECMO that a parent says that can turn your day around. It can be a simple phrase that a parent says or somebody says to you that can make your whole day down. And that's the whole thing. You also have to learn. I think I've learned how to say things, or what would I have wanted to have heard.
what really is helpful.
And
And
what is
don't,
helpful.
for me, don't ever, if my help is out there, you in Colorado know that's what I'm here for and that's what I'm dedicated to doing. You'll know when I can't help you. When my own son is in the hospital with pneumonia, you guys know I'm unavailable, but you know because your own children are going through similar things, you know, and I've made it clear, and I think you guys respect that of when I'm not available. I'm sure you're not gonna call me and say, hey, can you bring us dinner, and you're in the hospital, right? So you guys kind of have gotten to know me and know when I'm available to help you, and we have worked that out in our marriage and our family. My mom is very helpful, Team Able, they're all very helpful. Maggie's, I'll deliver, can I bring a meal? There's other people, I'll bring a meal. So we have a support system. This is not all me. So this is not all me when I'm helping you guys there. I have a lot of support. I have a lot of people that make meals and that have backed me and Wayne when we were going through this. And those are the same people that are lining up to help me help you.
And
So
Breath
you-
of Hope is also.
Yes, she's my backbone to a lot of this, and she has showed me and taught me how to help you.
We have volunteers in other areas, some of them that are trying to open, thinking of opening up their own chapters, because we know that this local support is where we want it to be. We've been struggling because we send packages all over the world. We are basically a nonprofit in the U.S., but what we want to do is, we have volunteers, we have people that will, blog and
Deliver
communicate
and visit
and things like that. We have parents out there as volunteers that are giving the information we print out there. We have a website where you can download the information if you can, or we will be glad to send it to you.
Yes. And so although you see
And we have
my...
a toll-free number.
Yeah, and although you see my face here in Colorado, Elizabeth has helped with a lot of those printing or a lot of those things that have been organized, or Team Able. So although I am the face of what you see, because I know the NICU, it's easier for me to go there and actually help you guys or be that first line of contact. But no, and I would never take credit for this all on my own, because I don't do it on my own. I have a wonderful support system, and this is me scolding you. Do not ever hesitate to ask me for help, because I've offered it. So that's what we're here for. Any other things about post-traumatic stress issues, questions, before we have our wonderful adult survivor, Katie, come up and tell us her story and her own daughter.
Do you need a computer or anything? I don't.
Okay, so we will welcome Katie, I want to say it right. Edic.
Yes.
Okay. We will welcome her, and she's going to tell us her story.
Thank you. Is this about right? I just thought I would sit because I didn't bring. I brought my baby book so I can pass that around. But thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me here today. I am really excited to have found you guys. My name is Katie Edic, and I am 29 years old, and I am a CDH survivor. I was born in 1983, and I had a right-sided diaphragmatic hernia. And this was before ECMO and any of the great technology that's present today. So we kind of had just the basic ventilation. I was born in a small hospital in Grand Island, Nebraska, and I was life-flighted from Grand Island to Omaha to the Children's Hospital. My mom is here for a little bit of reference. I
Mom,
need
do you want to join her up there? Do you want to join her?
Yeah.
So she's unprepared. Sorry.
No, just
A warm hand is prepared.
she carried you.
Yes. This is my mom. This is Becky Junker. And so I was life-flighted to Omaha, and I had a corrective surgery, and they used my own tissue to repair my diaphragm at the time, which worked for a short time, but I actually re-herniated and had to have a second surgery to repair my diaphragmatic hernia, and I have a hypoplastic right lung. The lower lobe is hypoplastic now. And so that is how my diaphragmatic hernia has been repaired. And the last surgery, we were just talking about this morning, we believe the last surgery was about 4 years old that I had. Thank you.
I'm a CDH mom, I carried those home.
And so, and I can let my mom touch on that a little bit too, but being a survivor, I just wanted to touch on my life up to this point. I had a great childhood that I remember. I am very fortunate that of course, I don't remember my struggle. I fought the battle and I won, but I don't remember. I do have small memories of the last surgery I had being in the hospital. I do have memories of that. I remember my chest protector. I remember being at the hospital. I remember the playroom that I got to play in. I have some good memories.
How old were you when you had that surgery, that last surgery? Sorry.
4.
We think of right about 4, and that was the pectus, really not
The
anything.
repairs.
Yes, the repair. And I believe, I wish the doctor were here, I wanted to ask him yesterday, I think the pectus excavatum is from the depth of air needed, and this, for a young woman in particular, is very difficult physically later. So it took my husband and a thoracic surgeon to convince me that this cosmetic surgery should be done because she had already gone through so much. But they said for her to go through that at the age of 18 would have been inexplicably difficult for her.
And I am eternally grateful for that decision. I know that you have to make very hard decisions when it comes to your children on extra surgeries, especially cosmetic, things like that, but you have to know from an adult survivor, I am eternally grateful for those decisions, especially as a woman. I can't thank them enough. I know that was a terrible decision to have to make, but I am eternally grateful for that one. But growing up, I spent just 1 day shy of a month in the hospital and was released and got to go home, and I have 2 older brothers. So life for me went right back into the fast lane. I didn't really have, the option of slowing down and whatnot. I got to be a normal child. I got to run around with my brothers. I knew that I was special. People in my community obviously heard about my story and reached out to my parents, and our community just knew who I was. So our color being turquoise, I just kind of had puffed out feathers like a peacock. I knew I was special, and I really flourished in that. I did love it. And so, it just, your reputation was before you, if you will, before they even knew me, they knew my story. So growing up, I guess where I'm going with that is you could take that advantage and let yourself get caught up in that you are this miracle child, and I can do things because I am a miracle. But instead, I feel like I followed in my brother's footsteps and I tried to keep up with them. And I am very lucky that I had parents that encouraged me to go for it. I can only imagine, as a parent myself now, I can only imagine the distress they felt. I, at one point in junior high, decided I could do sprints in track and tried to be a sprint runner. And I can imagine, my parents were at every event that I did, and I can imagine the terror that they felt watching me try and run and do these things, but they
chewing
never.
their nails off the whole time.
I think she probably breathed in a plastic bag for herself.
I mean, that simply want to place it, and I'm like.
We were doing pretty well at this little junior high, all of the kids from the community at this. We were doing great, but it was Katie's pediatrician who was coming through the crowd. And she had a daughter the same age. And so that, was like, oh my gosh, maybe we shouldn't have let her do that. But, Katie, I'm a strong-willed child, and praise God, Katie is a strong-willed child. I think that's why she's still here. Her will preceded her in everything that she did. And she didn't know that she couldn't. And honestly, there was no support for her. We didn't know any surviving diaphragmatic hernia people. And Katie's god sister just walked in a few minutes ago. Her godparents lived 5 houses from us. And they reminded us yesterday, they all took CPR. And I remember on several occasions when Katie was tiny, things that Katie wouldn't remember, they would come down as a team, and I could go take a shower, and they folded the laundry and played with boys, and just that shower, a complete shower, knowing that your child was in good hands was such a blessing. And so we had a support group that was vast, but very few people, except the Millers, really did find out about the ins and outs of this disease. Without a support group, we really didn't know what we didn't have that you do now have. Now, I do have to tell you, the day that Katie called me and said, Mom, there is a support group for diaphragmatic hernia. And she, highlighted it for me in the email so I could go to it. And so I prayed before I went to this, because just listening to you this morning, I'm sure you noticed that I was just fighting back tears.
Yes.
But all that Katie saw on the website was babies that looked like her. And they had tubes everywhere, and they were doing so well. And I went to that website, and I have to tell you, I was in a 36-hour defiant. I went back in time, and you think after 29 years that this would be gone. So seeing that you had a traumatic stress, I never realized that. And so you do live it. The most awesome thing is our son-in-law allowed me to camp out.
Take it out.
He allowed me to camp out at the hospital where my daughter delivered our granddaughter, our only granddaughter. And honestly, I don't know what I thought. If I thought I was a nurse, I don't know. I left my
wouldn't have
job.
let her leave either. That's the thing. It was like persistent camping out. Like, where are you going? I'm just going to the restroom. Okay, hurry back.
I was doing my report cards. I was a teacher at the time. I was doing my report cards in her room, asking for technical support from the hospital to make this happen. But I realized this morning that I loved that experience because I got to be, my last delivery was so traumatic. I relived what it could have been like through my daughter's delivery of a beautiful, healthy, normal child.
And I carried her to 38 weeks on my own. I had a beautiful pregnancy, honestly. I'll backtrack and go over my story a little bit more, but to take it from here, it's so amazing for me to sit here and tell you, especially those that have daughters, that it's 100% possible. The medical team never told me no, that I can remember, but it was a scary subject anytime we would bring it up if I were to ever get to have children. And I have a great husband, and he knew this coming into marriage, that we might have to seek different ways of having children. And we were blessed. We found out I was pregnant, and I still remember we were unable to get all four of our parents in the same room ever to tell them we were expecting. So we got to tell them all four individually, which was kind of neat in its sense. And I remember Shane's parents being so elated, and they know my story, but they know my story from an outsider perspective. They don't know the ins and outs of it. And so I remember how elated they were that they were going to have a grandchild. And I remember the pure fear in both of my parents' eyes when I told them. And they masked it with great excitement. I mean, they were excited, but I could see into their eyes, into their soul, they were terrified. Praise God, I had a great pregnancy. It was very enjoyable. I got nervous at times. She was very long when she was born, and I could feel her kicking clear up where I thought about where my patch was. So I'm just thinking, hold on, Patch, you can do it, let's get this done. And the delivery wasn't as great, but she's here and we are both healthy. And when she was born, she is perfectly healthy. There was not even a bump, scratch, bruise. I mean, she's perfectly healthy. And hearing the doctor yesterday where they don't know the cause of this, and it could be semi-genetic, and being a survivor myself, it honestly never occurred to me to fear that. It didn't. So I'm kind of glad I didn't know that going into it.
Well, he also then said there are
Other environmental factors.
and
It's
the
just
things they thought that were genetic, they might be genetic because it's not known the way CDH is.
Quick question on that. What did the doctors tell you? What were their forewarnings?
You'll probably be shocked. I asked around a little bit for a great OBGYN through the process, and we were so lucky. We had the most fantastic OBGYN. So I went in and I shared my story, and I told him, where my patch was and everything like that. And so I said, now, how do we go from here? Will I be a high-risk pregnancy? No, they did not make me a high-risk pregnancy at all. I went through a normal OBGYN. When we got to about 30 weeks, Shane and I talked to him, how are we going to do this? Is it going to be a planned C-section? No. He said, we're going to let you try this. We'll let you go. We'll monitor you. If we see distress from the baby or you, we'll go to plan B. But he was going to let me try.
Did they say there were any risks? Or it was just...
the risks that Bob and I were aware of were probably the most extreme. No one expected Katie to live. They really didn't. And so she was so experimental. that Bob and I were with her as often as we could be, but I didn't get to see her for the first week. She was in emergency C-section. The helicopter was out. They had to fly in a jet, which sounds like it would be so much faster, but it is really so much slower because they drive the ambulance out to greet the team, bring the team to the hospital, stabilize the baby, take her back to the airport, stabilize her, fly her, land, stabilize her. Ambulance greets her, and then she went for immediate surgery. Bob was in a car driving to go to Omaha, which is, I can't even tell you right now, 2.5 hours. I'm sure he made it in a lot less time that night. But you know what, to make a long story short, they didn't bother to cover her reproductive organs when they were doing x-ray upon x-ray upon x-ray upon x-ray. Sometimes 15, 25 a day, watching, what was going on. And if we were there, we would say, she needs to be covered. Cover her, But we weren't there a lot of the times that happened. So in the back of my mind, watching her grow up, especially when she became a teenager, I thought about what would have happened possibly to those eggs with all the radiation that we were exposed to. So during her pregnancy, honestly, I trusted God. But the fear was there. It was there.
They didn't say during my pregnancy what could happen to me. I asked a lot of questions. I was more concerned, I felt, than the doctor. He just had the utmost faith that he had the attitude, you got this. Well, what are you worried about? You're fine. You're going to do this. And, like I imagine I felt like most pregnant women in their third trimester, it was hard to breathe. I was short of breath. I felt like an 85-year-old woman walking down the street. I had to hold on to a staircase for a minute and catch my breath and keep going. But honestly, other than some shortness of breath, the fear of her kicks, so close to that, the pouch and everything, that was my concern. His concern was not present. He told me every week at our appointments, we just went over the new concerns, and he checked for things. If I brought a concern to him, hey, she has to be extremely long. Her kicks they were ferocious at times. And so we would have an ultrasound and check, and things were great. And we just kept moving forward. And like I said, even towards the end of the pregnancy, he was prepared to let me go and have a natural delivery. And that's how we set up for it. I had 13 hours of labor. They let me go through that. I told every nurse that walked in my room I want the epidural. They said, yes, we have you down for one. We'll give it to you at the appropriate time. I just wanted to make sure. And we went through the entire labor, and it was actually Addison's stress through the delivery that caused us to go into a cesarean section, not my own. I was doing fine. They were monitoring me. Everything was well with me, but Addison, when I would have large contractions, she just wasn't handling them well. Her heart rate was going down. So we went in for a C-section, and the rest is history. But I put my trust in him because he was so confident. When I looked at him, I was looking for signs of, let me check with my partners. No, it was just confident. We've got this, and we did.
And who wasn't there when she was born? Wasn't it a different physician?
Oh, yeah, yes. And then I went into labor, and I called, and I'm like, I'm going into labor. They're like, that's great, go to the hospital. So we go to the hospital, and it was his attending physician that actually delivered her. So it put a little terror in me, but he had put that utmost confidence in me that I went in there really surprisingly calm. In fact, when I called my husband to tell him my water had broke, which I kind of played that nasty game on him a lot. So first he didn't believe me, and second, when my water broke and I called him, I drove home. Our shifts overlapped, so he was at home. I drove home, and he came barreling out of the garage with our bags, like, let's go! I'm like, hold on, I need to take a shower. I need to prepare myself. Like, I am having a baby today. I need to prepare myself. So I think I was eerily, surprisingly calm even for myself. But that doctor had put so much confidence in me. Fear wasn't a factor in that day for me at all. It was just a great, great day. But backtracking, I guess, if you will, on my story, back to my childhood, where so many of you have your survivors right now. Like I said, I am very, very lucky that I have the parents I did, because I roller skated, I ran track, I played soccer, I played softball, I danced, all of these. Again, soccer, you get hit in your abdomen. Dance, you're stretching all over the place. These are activities I can only imagine my parents had to have a little bit of distress, and the term these days, the helicopter mom. I just am so grateful that they relinquished that control and they allowed me to do those activities. And I believe in the depths of my soul that it strengthened my lungs, it strengthened my body, and it strengthened my soul as well. That ability that I was just like anybody else. But again, I did kind of have that puffed out feathers. I knew I was special. I was reminded of that daily, and I loved that. And then as I grew older, into my adolescence, things changed for me a little bit. I was never angry about it, but it kind of, like you touched on this morning, it was kind of like, why me? Why has this happened to me? Why am I so different? I had acne, I had braces, and I was so thin. I was probably 85 pounds in junior high, I mean, just tiny. And so I went through a lot of struggles with other people perceiving that I had possibly anorexia, bulimia, other diseases that I didn't have. I was just fighting daily to eat enough and keep up with my own desires to be more than you think you're going to be, having all these limitations. So it's something that I did struggle through, and I remember feeling embarrassed of my body at times and almost shameful stepping into my locker to change for PE because I didn't want people to see my scars or ask questions. And that was that junior high phase that it's awkward and weird anyway, and then you add the cosmetic trials and tribulations of CDH on top of it. It was difficult for me. And then going into high school, I just felt like I needed to attempt to embrace the difference and just keep moving forward. So that's really when I found sports and dance and made myself extremely active in my life. And it wasn't probably until the college adulthood transition that I learned to really embrace this and really embrace how different it makes you. Because in that junior high phase, you want to blend in, you want to be in the background, you don't want to be different, you want to be part of that in crowd. And I felt so outside, and I didn't know, how, and it was only my perception. Looking back, it was me who was putting the most pressure on myself, that I was so different, that I didn't feel good about myself. And then moving into high school and college, that's when you meet these great people who love you for you. And when I finally felt comfortable enough with people to share my stories, the reactions were always amazing. It again gave you that little bit of like puffed up confidence that, this isn't just a story. This isn't just my family telling me how special I am, because I probably could have, had stitches and been a miracle. I didn't realize until, as I moved into adulthood, just how special that it was, and how many obstacles I really did overcome to be here. And so it was starting to embrace that changed me more into wanting to advocate for this disease, wanting to educate people. And
was it yourself that just motivated yourself to kind of really just like accept it, or was it something like your parents kind of?
It was an inward struggle for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
You as parents have your own struggle, watching your children go through this and feeling helpless, not being able to help them, and your child has to fight that battle. You can advocate for them, and you can love them, and you can talk to them and encourage them, but it really is the child that has to go through that battle. And it's not just the battle of surviving, it's that battle of thriving. How am I going to go from here? How am I going to make sure that I make the most of my life? So to answer your question, not to discredit anybody, because I had great support as well, but I really do think for me it was more of an inward battle of, I'm either going to eventually just hate this, or I can embrace this and really just love my life for what it is. And I came to that point, and even through my pregnancy with Addison, I had never Googled my disease. I didn't want to know anything about it, honestly. And it wasn't and it wasn't to be, that rebellious kid, like, oh, I just don't care. I was scared, and still am. I didn't want to Google this disease and see, lifespan of 30 or 35. I wasn't ready to look in that that mirror of reality yet. I just kept trying to live my life. Honestly, like my mom said, I am very strong-willed, and I think when you're born with that fight, when you're born and you immediately have to start fighting, it just doesn't go away. It doesn't, and bless their hearts, I know I was hard to raise, but I think that when you're born fighting, I just think it's embedded in you to constantly have that fight, to live, to thrive, to do all of these wonderful things that you want to do with your life. And so, I finally... Yeah.
Can you send him a phone call?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
No, I'm joking.
But it wasn't until about 6 months ago, it was just a wild hair. I decided, you know what, I want to see what this is about. I want to see what's out there. It's been 29 years. I want to know ECMO. I want to know what the NICU is like now. And that's when I found Breath of Hope. And that's when I found countless websites and countless tutorials and blogs, bios, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not the diamond in the rough. Unfortunately, it's more common than I thought, and there are so many people going through this struggle, and to actually find people. When I found Breath of Hope on Facebook, I'm finding 18, 19-year-olds posting. There are people, I'm still older, but there's people in that bracket that are growing up, healthy, living lives, going to college, doing sports, living their life absolutely normal. And I am 100% confident in the fact that if I would have been born 100% healthy, I would still be where I'm at right now. I would still have accomplished what I've accomplished now. My body has not held me back. I have accomplished everything I have wanted to do with my life, even in a fragile body. I am a sister, a daughter, a wife, a mother. Mother is a category I never thought I would be able to put myself into, ever. And it is, to date, it is my best accomplishment. Hands down, she is our world. And it's sometimes you have to remember every day to tell yourself that they're little blessings. You know, it is. She is the biggest blessing. And we did too. And it's just to be able to sit here 3 generations is amazing. When, you know, initially they told my parents, before I even took the flight, they told them to take pictures of me that I most likely wouldn't even survive the flight. So to sit here 3 generations later and feel that I have accomplished, and I have so much more, I'm not quitting by any means, but to be where I'm at almost 30 years old, I think everybody has a bucket list. And I am so lucky that I have gotten to check things off, and I've gotten to live a life where I can even create a bucket list and have accomplishments. And I honestly believe that there's nothing I can't do. And what I wanted to tell the parents in the room is just to keep that encouragement alive with your children. Don't let them know they're special. Believe you me, I loved that. I loved feeling like a miracle child and so special. But I now live in a community. My husband and I live in Phoenix now. So I live in a community where I'm not known, where my miracle doesn't precede me, where my feathers are half the time down, like, wait, what? But I am a miracle! And you have to start to make that name for yourself. And I don't share my story with a whole lot of people, because I'm just paving the way for me now. I represent me, my disease doesn't represent me. And so I just live that daily. And when I do bring up my story, it always amazes me at the response. I have a lot of women tell me, oh, you're so lucky, you can eat whatever you want. Well, I earned this ding dong. I earned this extra whipped cream on my pie. I earned the piece of pie. So every now and again I choose to share my story because it's worth sharing. It is a story worth sharing, and all of your children's stories will be worth sharing, and don't ever stop telling them about it. I always loved sitting and listening to my mom tell my stories. I learned something new every time. While I was in the battle, I don't remember it. I don't remember my battle. And I think that's something reassuring for you parents to know too, that there are certain things. I know my mom said, like Mr. Roberto has played a lot in the NICU. And so it reminds her of the NICU. Well, I hate my alarm clock, but it's not because I remember bells and whistles and things in the NICU. I don't have any recollection of that. And I think that can give you restful minds as parents as well, that we will continue to thrive and live, and we've fought that battle, and luckily it's not something that we'll remember. The bad parts, if you will. And unfortunately, you parents will have that forever. And so that's a gift that you can give your children, is telling them their story and letting them know how special they are. But don't hold them back. I mean, let them try everything they want to do. That's how I came to thrive. I'm not just a survivor, I am definitely a thriver out of this disease. And I try to live every day not letting fear drive my life, because I don't know, and I don't even think a medical professional can tell you the lifespan, possibly, or the complications that may arise, or how young I have to be when I go on oxygen, if that's ever going to happen. And frankly, I don't want to know, because I've beaten this many statistics already. I feel like I can just keep beating them. So I don't want to know, and I think that's why I never Googled the disease, but I'm so glad I did, because I found such a group that I feel we can add to. And when you say people to call, I know both my mom and I would love to be added to that list. I would love to talk to parents going through it. I wasn't on that side of it. I was the one in the incubator, but I can still talk to parents, and I think sometimes just seeing me is all parents need to see, is that there is a future for the children, and it is a great future. I've had a great life, and with God's blessing, it's not even close to being done yet, so.
I have a question, since you do have older siblings.
Yeah.
I guess for both of you, how did that, the extra care and attention affect, or if it did at all, affect the other children?
I hate to even tell you this, because you're going to think my husband and I are genetic freaks. But our firstborn child was misdiagnosed at the age of 1 with, I just lost the term, when the heart is enlarged and it just beats itself to death, cardiomyopathy. And we lived with that. We didn't get a second diagnosis. And so, when we had our second baby, he was normal, healthy, and at the age of 3, idiopathic, he became epileptic. I mean, hugely epileptic. What they used to call grand mal seizures. And it was while we were dealing with Dave's epilepsy that God presented us with Katie. And the day that I was at the hospital, Dave was having an EEG. One of the nurses came up to me and said, there was a new wing being added to the hospital, St. Francis in Rhode Island. He said, we're thinking of naming this new wing after you, because you and Bob have practically lived here. And, unbeknownst to me, I was carrying a child who had a right-sided diaphragmatic hernia. But Bob and I felt like we had paid our dues, and that she would be fine. That she would be fine. I had too much amniotic fluid. That was, something they looked at. And a very dear friend of ours was a radiologist, and he did a screening, and they were looking for spina bifida. I didn't know that, and disproved that. The day after Katie was born, Steve Woodman, the radiologist, reread with a magnifying glass and saw the diaphragm. So the only thing that could have been done differently, which would have been so great for me, is if I could have delivered it on the top where she was life-flight too, and I could have seen her. But as it was, I had an emergency C-section, so I only got to feel her. I couldn't turn my head. Only got to feel her in a basket when the life-flight team. And then Sherry, Katie's primary nurse, became my lifeline from the NICU, and she called me sometimes 17 times a day. And then, Katie would crash, and she would come back, and she would crash, and she would come back. And I got to see her for the first time on St. Patrick's Day. And this primary nurse really was the closest thing to an angel that I've met here on earth. Katie was on a medication to keep her in a very relaxed state. Her eyelids were always closed. Parallel. That's it. I couldn't think of it. All I could think of was Pavlov, and that's the dog, and I didn't want to go there. I got to lean down beside Katie's beautiful room, and I said, Katie and her eyes popped. And her primary nurse told me it was the first time that she had opened her eyes. I don't know if that's really the truth, but she responded to her mommy's voice. And we had that area just decorated with pictures of her brothers and her teddy bears and things that they had given to her. But to answer your question, Dave, we were dealing with epilepsy at the time. And our oldest child, we knew, did not have this heart defect that they had told us about. So it was a very, very challenging time. We had one family who supported us totally, and a lot of good friends who wanted to help and who really didn't understand. I was teaching at the time and did not sign my contract for the next year so that I could be with Katie and continue to nurse her. That was the other thing, carrying around you just had a C-section, can't vacuum, you can't do anything. I was able to rent a 20-pound professional breast pump. And I would walk in the NICU with like this. With this breast pump, nobody saying, how are your stitches? And Katie was given the breast milk until I think it was about a week before she was dismissed. We were able to connect. And here came Sherry, the primary nurse. It wasn't just Katie and I and the primary nurse in this special room. And Katie knew exactly what to do. And, she nursed. And they told us then it would maybe be about 10 days before she got to come home. And, certainly I wouldn't relive that time for anything. And watching you, knowing that some of you have babies in your area, or that you're pregnant, our lives are a journey. But certainly, I wish that I had the faith then that I do now, so that I could have been a beacon for God. Instead, I was a needy mother, and when I believe it was the pulmonologist, the pediatric pulmonologist, he was the first person who really indicated. He said to me, there will be times in this child's life that you will be so angry that you will want to spank her. And that was the first time anybody had indicated to me that she was going to live. And so, I believe I maybe even threw my arms around it. Spanked her right there. Threw my arms around this doctor because no one had been able to say, you're going to take her.
They were a lot more disciplined about CDH. And especially, my question to you is, CDH was rare then. Right-sided CDH. In '99, I recall they were saying it was fatal.
Yes. And to really, really make it very complicated, I asked the doctor about it yesterday. Our pediatrician was not in town the night Katie was born. And so the pediatrician who came on was very nervous. And he turned her x-ray and inserted the chest tube in her own little bone. Now, I don't know, she's got a big scar.
I've got a big scar on my healthy lung where they inserted.
We don't know how this child breathed, but he did convince Bob to go in and take a lot of pictures of Katie because he knew that we probably would never, I would never see her alive. I never got to hold her. I didn't get to hold her the day that I saw her. I believe that was
Well, the night that she was born, this was, like you say, it was kind of rare back in those days, and so we knew there was, on the delivery team, we knew there was a problem, but when they said, then they finally said, well, I think it's a diaphragmatic hernia. All I heard was hernia, I thought, oh.
we went,
no, yeah, wow. And what, you said something earlier about how people react, and people come up to us, and because of our 3 children, we have some issues with all 3 of them, health-wise. People say, I can't believe how strong you and your wife are. And what I tell them is, we're no stronger than anybody else. You've got 2 options. You go sit in the corner and cry and feel sorry for yourself, or you get up and do what you have to do and move on. That's your only two options.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and if you can't accept that, I'm sorry, that's where we're headed, that's our journey, that's where we're going there.
And we did have to change pediatricians. She left on all kinds of monitors, got her home, called the pediatrician, said we're in town, she's on this monitor, this monitor, and this monitor. He hadn't trained in Nebraska, he had trained in Kansas. He didn't believe that she should have these monitors, and he said, take her off of them. And so I got daily calls from NICU. I also got daily calls from my pediatrician, and they were always. So if we didn't have enough problems already, then we had that too. And I remember that, that was very, very traumatic. So, the fact that many of you are depending on doctors here in town that know before the baby is born, they're going to need special care. I can't imagine how you must look upon these doctors as, a redeemer of sorts. But we did make very, very good friends in the medical profession.
But I don't want to discount your question quickly about the siblings. I have an amazing relationship with my brothers now and then, and I know at times I was the annoying little sister, but I feel that they embraced me, even young. I don't feel, from my perspective, I never felt any animosity because of the attention I received or doctor's appointments that we had to continue for years until things were pretty well released from me. But I don't feel that there was a lot of animosity with them for me, and I just thought they were the best things ever. So I enjoyed my siblings, and even now, the three of us have a great relationship. And I talked to my brother on Saturday before coming up here, and he just expressed how proud he was of me for taking the step and coming up here today. And so not only is there no animosity, but there's encouragement and a great deal of love there. So.
Does anybody else have any questions for Katie or Becky before we break?
I have one for each of you. You can short it. Make it short answer. It doesn't matter. Punish her. Did you let her get away with everything? No, as in like.
Yes.
What I mean by you punish her the way, like, let's say, I was punished.
I mean, we've never done corporal punishment, anything like that, but she, honestly, already having two brothers, and they were a handful in themselves, she fell right into that pattern. I mean, she was responsible, she had consequences. I don't know that we ever spanked her. Marcia, did we ever spank her?
I remember
She was the babysitter, and the God family.
From a babysitter's perspective, treating her and all of them as any other kid. They're all very ornery.
Yes.
As an add-on to that question, because you didn't know physically, did you let her do whatever she wanted?
Well, activity, I mean, life-wise.
Yeah,
She had to choose her activities, but, honestly, I think children thrive better with parameters. That's just the kind of parenting, and as an elementary teacher, children really do appreciate it when they have definite parameters within,
If it was activities though, if it was within reason, I can't remember me nor my siblings though being told no. We just had a very open attitude about let's try everything, and you don't quit something you just started, you tried it for the entirety and things like that. But when it comes to just plain activities, I can't remember an activity that I came to them and said, hey, I'd like to be involved with basketball, or I really want a new pair of roller skates, or I want to be in dance. It was all encouraged and supported, and yes was the answer always.
She knew her limitations when she was playing soccer or she was playing basketball. I mean, when she ran out of gas, she knew it, and she kind of pretty well took herself out. It's time for her to be on the sidelines or whatever. So she knew her limitations, and we encouraged her to try it, and say push her into it, but try it, and if you don't like it, then that's enough. But treat her as normal as possible, and like I said, as she got older, she knew her limitations, and she would stop when it was time to stop.
And I have one just super fast, just something I wanted to close on that I remember from growing up. A quick story is, do you guys remember the presidential national awards that you could win in PE for like stretching? And, yeah. Well, we had that in elementary school, and I really wanted to win that red ribbon that year. And so I did all of the events, and I fell short in one event only to win this red ribbon, and it was the mile run. And I was devastated. I mean, this was like 4th grade, I think. I was pretty devastated. And so my PE teacher, on one free day, we could either play dodgeball, or if you wanted to retest in anything, if you wanted to retest in anything, you could. She was going to give you that opportunity. So I raised my hand, and I know Mrs. Jensen now on a personal level, and she said when my hand was put up in the air, she was like, oh God, no. And so she said, yes, and I said, I want to retest in that mile run, and she allowed me to. And the point of the story is, I don't remember if I got the red ribbon or the blue ribbon. I just remember that I did get out there and I ran that mile run again. And that year, she presented, out of the whole elementary school, she presented someone with the best will and drive in PE, and I received the award. And to this day, I still have that award. It's something that I probably threw away the ribbon, but I still have my, you were the go-getter in PE. And so it's a small but simple way for me to just say, let them try everything, and we won't succeed at everything, but we will have tried and live the awful, terrible word, we will have lived a somewhat normal life in a unique way, because that's the word we love. Thank you again.
We're gonna take a quick break and then regroup here.